Okay, so first the endowment. You've heard, I think you've heard about this maybe 2 years ago. You were already talking about this. I haven't set a date for retirement yet. Some days it seems like tomorrow would be a good idea, and other days it's years away. So I haven't set a date yet, so there isn't that urgency. However, what we've noticed is that positions at Oregon State University are not being refilled very quickly. I think we just had a couple of examples of that, 5 years, for example, when there isn't an endowment. In contrast, when we've had an endowment, we've had somebody refilled immediately. The turf endowment is a great example of that. There wasn't even a gap between when Rob Golubieski left and when Alec Kowaleski joined our faculty. So the goal has been to be proactive so that there are $1 to $2 million in an endowment prior to my retirement so that my position could be refilled. Because as mentioned earlier, I'm a statewide berry crop specialist. I'm also the berry research leader at North Willamette, and I'm the one that teaches the berry classes at OSU. So if my position's not refilled, it would be a big blow to teaching, extension, and research. And that is not how I want to leave my legacy. That would be something that would make me very sad, and I think it would be a real disadvantage for the industry. So we started 3 years ago or so to start trying to generate funds for an endowment. And I have not been asking for money, others have. It's something, I already asked for money for research, so I don't want to ask for money to support my rehire whenever that happens. Our goal is $1 to $2 million because the guaranteed percentage that comes from that, which is I think 4.5%, goes directly to the person who you hire, either to support their program or to support part of their salary, which is now common hires of 0.75 state-funded salaries, and people work full-time. And so, $1 to $2 million being the goal. I'm really pleased with the fact that we have 375,000 pledged, considering there's, for some, a lack of urgency. So that, I'm very proud of that. We have, in terms of commission, with a lot of packers and growers that have supported the endowment. A large share of them are blueberry related. The Blueberry Commission put in $50,000, and the Strawberry Commission put in $75,000. The Oregon Raspberry Blackberry Commission has not yet supported the endowment. I know they've been talking about it. I think at their last meeting there wasn't a quorum. We came to the meeting before that and updated the OSU Foundation, updated on how the OSU Foundation works and is the money guaranteed to be used for the rehire? Yes. Is there a guaranteed return, and what's the cost of the investment? 1.5%, I think, just like any other, those of us who have financial advisors. So I think the ORBC has all the information they need, and I hope they'll at least make a decision soon so that we know. Anyway, the endowment's open, and anyone who wishes to contribute, it would be welcome, obviously tax deductible. No gift too small, I'm told.
Well, that's a habit.
Any questions about the endowment? Or move on to the other? Okay. Many of you are familiar with the Northwest Center for Small Fruits Research. And many of you have been integral in being involved in going as a small group to lobby for funds from Congress in the past. And 2 or 3 years ago, there was a mandate to eliminate earmarks. And this was considered an earmark, the Northwest Center for Small Fruit Research. So that really critical research support was in jeopardy. Then, 2 years ago, the Specialty Crop Research Initiative, SCRI, said that they were interested and willing to fund centers of excellence to work in a similar fashion as the Northwest Center for Small Fruit Research. So that was really good news. So a team of berry and grape researchers and administrators in Oregon and Washington for berries and grapes, just like the Northwest Center. We used to have Idaho involved, but there really wasn't anyone at Idaho that was capable or interested, so it's just Oregon and Washington now. And submitted a pre-proposal, which is required, to see if there's interest. And unfortunately, 2 years ago, the pre-proposal wasn't accepted, so we didn't submit a full grant. This past year, the pre-proposal was accepted. So, and then they gave us 6 weeks notice, I think it was, to get the full grant written, which is like an absolute nightmare short time frame. This SCRI is due at the end of next week, so we're really frantically working on this. In fact, I'll be leaving the meeting early to get back to it. Let me kind of explain how it will work. It consists of 4 overarching objectives that had to be general so that various specific research projects that could address either berries, specific berry, or grapes would fit under them. Does that make sense? And so we have these overarching objectives, and then we have this pot of money, which would function very similarly, if not identically, to what you're used to with the Northwest Center for Small Fruit Research. So it would be an RFP would be sent out, research grants submitted, and an industry and scientific committee would decide which ones of those get funded based upon industry priorities. And many of you have been involved in that process at the annual Northwest Center for Small Fruit Research meeting. So that process would be identical to what has happened in the past, and would allow this grant to be flexible, the center to be flexible and address your needs as you get them. SWD would have been a great example of one of those critical needs a while back. So it does include that flexible pot of money, but it couldn't just include that. It had to include targeted research to get the ball rolling. And so those objectives that we're focusing on were developed at an industry meeting in October 2014. Remember, that was to get us ready for that first pre-proposal that was not successful. So the objectives haven't changed very much at all. And what they are is mechanization and developing mechanization to meet the reduced labor needs and to allow growers to continue to be successful in a time when labor is getting less available and more expensive. So what that particular objective is focusing on is caneberry pruning and training. And so I was encouraged to hear that this is something that is expensive and that needs to be done by research. And at WSU, Manoj Karki and Kin Zhang are engineers, and they had an SCRI planning grant to develop some preliminary equipment that can selectively prune out floricanes in raspberry from primocanes. A lot easier to do in a trailing blackberry caning out. And is done mechanically by many growers already. But training is easier in red raspberry than in blackberry, as Frank mentioned earlier. But we've developed production systems where we don't get 20-foot canes, higher density plantings where canes are shorter. So we can both try and just like we've done with blueberry, worked with our machine manufacturers to develop a marriage between the production system and the equipment to make it more successful. So while it may be possible to pull and lift trailing blackberries from the ground and train them in our current production system, certainly easier for a thornless Columbia Star, for example, than a Marion, or a thornless Marion than a thorny Marion. It's possible, and we've done it successfully with high-density plantings with shorter canes that are more cold-hardy. So I've already done that, so I think we can look at developing equipment in both systems. So this grant would fund that development if it's successful. And then another objective looks at nutrition and irrigation on various berry crops and grapes, and the impact looking at various fertigation systems, different weed mat strategies, and the impact on soil, moisture content and root growth, and blueberries, and various different types of fertilizers fertigated. So deficit irrigation, those types of questions. On the east side, of course, Washington has a big east side industry, and on the west side, Washington and Oregon. And then the fourth one is breeding, looking at genotype by environment interactions. Do we need to select cultivars in these different climates? When we have a very different climate in eastern Washington for blueberry and primocane raspberry, for example, than the west side of both states. And evaluation of clones and rootstocks for nematode resistance. So those are the three kind of research objectives. And then there's one overarching extension objective, which deals with developing a new website, social media, figuring out what might be any barriers to growers adopting some of this new technology, farmer-to-farmer focus groups where we sit down and all talk as a group to try and move forward in all these different areas. Sharing a lot of what you've seen the Northwest Center do with an annual conference and sharing information and having you share your priorities and us sharing some of our challenges and some of our successes. All of that would be included in this proposal, including management for Philip Goot, who you all know, to manage the center of excellence as he's been doing for the Northwest Center. So it's a huge project, $2 million a year for 5 years with a possibility of renewing it. So it's not chump change. It's worth all the extra hours me and others have been putting in, although it's been all-consuming lately. Hopefully we'll be successful, and you'll be amongst the first to know if it's successful. It would be really good news for